Imagine relying on a dozen different software programs to run your business, none of which are connected, and each one more expensive and more complicated than the last. It can be pretty stressful. Now, imagine Odoo. Odoo has all the programs you'll ever need, and they're all connected on one platform. Doesn't Odoo sound amazing? Let Odoo harmonize your business with simple, efficient software that can handle everything for a fraction of the price. Sign up today at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
I am Christopher Titus of the Titus Podcast.
I am Rachel.
And I'm Ken Highland, a.k.a. The Highlander.
When the rest of the world is screaming insanity, we scream sanity. We do a satire, comedy, news, and events podcast.
First and foremost, funny first.
Whatever's happening in the world, if you want to hear it in a way that doesn't rip your soul out, we'll make you laugh with it. At the end of the day, we just scream sanity. That's what we do.
Can't we just talk sanity? Because
No, you have to scream sanity. So
Nobody's going to hear it.
So tired of you guys screaming.
I talk stupidity.
Well, that's true.
The Titus Podcast on all major streaming platforms, YouTube, and at ChristopherTitus.com. Titus Podcast. It's time to scream sanity.
On this episode of the Video Archives podcast, School's in Session. Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary go back to class in The Substitute. When an inner-city Miami school teacher gets kneecapped after standing up to her school's gang leader, her spec-ops boyfriend goes undercover as a substitute teacher to take down the punk. What he finds he never expected, a complicated conspiracy of criminals at work that only he and his team can take down. Quentin and Roger discuss how Diane Venora and Tom Berenger's on-screen chemistry makes this movie work, the excellent extras casting, and how this flick just has no right to be this good. The most dangerous thing about a school used to be the students, until now. Next up, I promise to love you forever. But would you keep your promise to me, even if you didn't recognize who I was? Quentin and Roger keep theirs in 1979's The Promise. A rich student fiancée has her face mangled by a car accident. Her future mother-in-law offers to fix her up on one condition: she never sees her son again. Roger and Quentin discuss how this movie mashes up two of Quentin's favorite genres, the smash performances by the actors in the film, and some of Roger's speculations about the true meaning of what director Gilbert Cates is actually saying with this film. And on our last stop, the train is being hijacked by none other than Pancho Villa. In 1969, General Pancho Villa escaped from the clutches of General Goyo. What ensues is a ragtag paella western directed by Eugenio Martin. And believe me, guys, you'll never know quite where it's going. Quentin and Roger focus in on the interesting choice in casting, the quick and witty dialogue, and some of the scenes where you just have to see it to believe it. I'm Gala Avary, and joining us now, here's Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary.
Okay, thank you, Gala Avary. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Video Archives podcast, Kill the Bagalov. And now I shall introduce my co-host and dear friend, Roger Roberts Avary.
Thank you, Quentin. It's great to be back.
And one of the things I'm trying to do on the show this season, I'm trying to put in at least one movie every episode that I haven't seen. Or if I have seen it, I saw it so long ago, I remember fuck all about it. And that qualifies for The Substitute. So The Substitute, and I found out, is our second to latest movie that we're doing an episode on. I was guessing when we were watching it that the movie was done in 1990.
Yeah, and I thought you were right because there had been so many of these substitute movies that they kept trickling out over the years. And so I just kind of timed it out like to be 1990.
Yeah, and it just seemed like, this seemed like the kind of thing that I could have watched around that time. But it turned out that no, it's like 96. So it's 2 years after we did Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, in fact, when you showed me the box of this, it's live home video. And I was like, oh my God, live. You know, this if this was around 1990, this must have been Rana was probably responsible for this movie. This was like just before we came in.
Rana Wallace, yeah.
But in fact, this is after we had our films at live. They were riding off the success of Dogs. And
I think actually Richard Gladstein, who was the number 2 guy at the company, I think he left, all right, and went to Miramax.
That's right.
Probably just before Pulp Fiction. So he would have been gone. It would have been the Rana Wallace show.
Yeah.
I think by that time.
This guy is dangerous.
It was the toughest school in the city.
What you want? Back off. If I don't.
And when she chose a side,
I wanted to stop all this violence.
so did they.
Lock this set me up, I know it.
Now he's taking control.
I'm in charge of this class.
About time you boys started hitting the books.
Who is he?
Tom Berenger, Ernie Hudson, The Substitute, rated R. Starts April 19th at theaters everywhere.
I remember this movie for a couple different reasons. One, it became a very popular, it did surprisingly good at the theaters for like the little movie that it was. Then it did exceptionally well on video. And it was one of those films that they created a whole video franchise on it. So let me read the back of the box.
Yeah.
Shale, Tom Berenger character, a battle-scarred mercenary, finds that war has moved closer to home when his girlfriend is attacked by a ruthless band of teenagers. Determined to root out this terrifying menace once and for all, Shale goes undercover in a local high school to rid the community of this deadly threat. Posing as a teacher, he and his crack team of mercenaries set an elaborate trap to catch the ringleaders and demonstrate the awesome power of justice in this explosive thriller. And it doesn't have the running time on the back, but it is a live entertainment home video. And on the tape, it says approximate running time 114 minutes. Rated R.
He sure is battle scarred. It's almost like he's still got his makeup on from Platoon.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't quite go all the way down the side of his face.
Well, they managed that. Apparently that makeup was pretty tough on his face, and they managed to peel off half of it. He's like, I got to go do the substitute. I'll just leave this on for this movie.
So how I ended up seeing this movie is this movie came out, definitely has a good premise, almost revenge-o-matic premise, a vigilante kind of premise that I tend to like. Badass killer presents himself in a job where his badassness is not obvious, and you just wait for the bad guys to run afoul of him. And in that regards, actually, the movie fairly works, I actually think. But the thing about it was, for some reason, and I even remember thinking that Tom Berenger was good casting in this role, but for some reason, I didn't see it at the theaters. Because I just figured, well, if this is really good, I'll hear about it.
Well, that was kind of the live model. It's live home video. They're a home video company. They've got end caps at, Walmart and stuff like that, that they're filling, and they're making movies for that market particularly.
I don't think this is made for live. I think they just released it on video.
Well, Killing Zoe wasn't made for live. It was released by October Films.
Yeah.
The release, which was much smaller than this film, but the release tended to serve the home video release. Like if they had a theatrical release, that was just required so that they could have an end cap at Walmart, under Live's distribution.
Well, the thing is, The Substitute ended up getting fairly decent reviews, and it ended up surprising people. And it was one of those movies that was probably meant to play theatrically, like in Los Angeles, for a week and maybe hang in there for
college towns. Yeah, college towns.
And hang in there one more week, maybe on the lower half of a double feature and then move on. But I think this actually ended up playing for the entire month.
I think it surprised everyone.
Yeah, it really surprised everyone. It got on my radar, aside from just the ad in the newspaper, when I talked to a good friend of mine and also a friend of yours, Craig Hammond.
Yeah, Craig.
And Roger actually produced a film that Craig directed.
Yeah, Boogie Boy.
And so I ended up talking to him, and he goes, hey, so have you seen The Substitute? I go, no, I haven't seen it. Is it any good? Oh, yeah, it's really good. You're going to really like it. Tom Berenger's really, really good in it. And it's got good bad guys. And no, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. That was kind of what I was waiting for, to point me in a direction with somebody whose taste I had liked, especially when it comes to badass.
Now you mention it, this is kind got Craig movie.
It's a perfect Craig movie.
Perfect Craig movie.
Yeah, you could have written it, actually. Yeah. And Tom Berenger's almost playing Craig.
Yeah. Yeah, Craig is he's very mild-mannered, and he comes across really peaceful and everything.
But also very intense.
But he's also super intense and percolating underneath, and he's kind of sinewy and ripped, he's really worked out and fit and everything like that. So you kind of get the feeling that this gentle guy could kill you.
Yeah, exactly.
If he wanted to.
I think by the time that I had talked with Craig, it had left the theaters. So I think I actually watched it on Showtime or HBO or something, where it was I had all those channels, and oh, hey, finally the Substitute's coming on. Okay, so I'll finally get around to watching it. And I remember liking it well enough, but I remembered fuck all about it. Then what ended up happening with The Substitute is it did remarkably well on video, so well that they decided to do, for them, a fairly big budget sequel. And like a lot of these, they didn't get the original guy to come back, but they recast it with another almost equally as popular guy.
And definitely for the home video market.
Yes, exactly. So when they did Substitute 2, they didn't have Tom Berenger. It's Treat Williams comes in, and Treat Williams plays the role. And then that did so good that they did a third Substitute also with Treat Williams. And so it became like a legit, just like Tom Berenger's other movie, Sniper, it became a legit video franchise. I mean, a Sniper, I think there's at least 6 of them.
Yeah.
And the reason we ended up watching it, one, we're looking for stuff like this, but also there's this guy out of South Africa that has a bunch of really cool exploitation movies, and his prints are pretty good. And so I got Substitute. I go, hey, well, let's sit down and watch it. Let's watch Substitute. So, Roger, what did you think of Substitute?
Well,
The Substitute.
So when you first brought it up, I was like, like the vague memory I had, and I couldn't remember anything about it, just like you.
Yeah.
When it began, I thought, okay, at some point it's going to click in. Well, it was completely fresh to me. And actually, I'm really glad it was, because it's a really fun movie in that it just lets itself go to where the audience kind of wants it to go, where its audience specifically wants it to go. But what really excited me about it was seeing the name Alan Ormsby on the box.
Yeah.
Because I always know that I'm going to get something a little bit special when I see Alan Ormsby as a writer on it. And Alan being the guy who children shouldn't play with dead things.
Writer, producer, and star.
Writer, producer, and star. He wrote My Bodyguard. He's like a Hollywood.
He wrote the Cat People remake.
The Cat People remake.
He wrote and directed that Robert Blossom Ed Gein movie.
Yeah. So for that, I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm going to get something special.
No, I was excited to see Alan Ormsby's name in this too.
And there is enough quirky Alan Ormsby feel, and then also a kind of melodramatic quality to him, but a playful melodrama. The way the love scenes are handled in this, the kind of romantic scenes, I love.
No, they're really good.
Because those are really hard scenes to do. Tom Berenger is he's like starting to inflate a little bit. Right. To make the love story work and to feel ingenuous, to feel like it's actually real. They do it in a playful way. They're playful with each other.
No, they have
and teasing with each other.
No, the whole scene where she's trying to scratch herself inside of her cast is actually a really quirky, little funny kind of scene that a couple of really good actors can pull it off. And I think they like the fact that there was like a quirk factor to it.
Yeah, I just think that is such a hard scene to pull off, and Berenger does it, man. He shamelessly throws himself into it, and he's like, when he kicks that lamp over, everything feels really kind of good and naturalistic.
The idea in the film is Tom Berenger is a badass paid mercenary, like a character like the Christopher Walken character in Dogs of War, and he's got his little group of guys, but they can't quite get a job right now. There's no one's hiring at that
younger
moment.
mercs. Yeah.
So he's got some time off, and he goes to hang out with his girlfriend, who is Diane Venora.
Yeah, and he's not willing to take the jobs that he knows are basically you just want me to kill somebody. You want me to kill cops, basically.
Yeah, no. Well, the jobs that are available right now are basically where they're just guarding drug dealers.
Yeah, and they're in Miami, and so you're just dealing with sleaze bags, and he doesn't want to do that. And his crew is kind of like, look, man, we need to eat. We need money.
And they have a little, they have like, hey, look, if that's just the only business there is, that's the business we're in.
Yeah.
And he's like, let's hold off.
And they have a little less ethics than him, but he's father-like to them.
Yeah, exactly. But they don't want to just break up the team willy-nilly.
Right.
So he has just some time off. And he goes to hang out with his girlfriend. This takes place in Florida. He goes to hang out with his girlfriend who works at apparently the worst school in Florida, the worst high school in Florida. I mean, beyond worst high school.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy depiction of an out of control high school.
And that school is run by this gang of drug dealers. And then the leader of that gang kind of runs the school along with the principal, played by Ernie Hudson. And the leader of that gang is played by Mark Anthony.
And he's great in this. I loved him in this.
I think he's very, 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 very good. I think they overuse him. All right. He has too much screen time, and it bugs me that he never quite gets paid back to the level of mayhem he causes.
Yeah.
It's not...
As a mini boss, he should have been dealt with by our lead guy, and in a way that it was really,
by the end of this movie, I don't have the same feeling that I had at the end of The Human Factor when it comes to all the bad guys getting their desserts. Yeah. But he's very, very effective. I think he could have been used better, all right? But he's good in it. He's very good in it. And you fucking hate him.
Yeah, he's convincing. He's got that, skull-like face of his where he's...
No, I hate his character so much, it's hard for me to be positive about him, all right? But that's a good thing.
Yeah. He does an amazing job in this.
He's got, you just want his face to get punched off.
Yeah.
But Diane Venora, his girlfriend, runs afoul of this character, Mark Anthony's character. So he puts a vendetta on her. And so she's out there running one day, jogging, and then she has this big, huge guy kneecap her and smash her kneecap. And so she's fucked up. And Tom Berenger fights this guy. The guy runs away. And so now she's kind of laid up for, apparently a month. I mean, he really does a number on her. She's described to Berenger everything that's going on. He kind of wants vengeance. He wants to get the guy that fucked up his girlfriend.
She's also asked him when she's all doped up on Percocet or whatever, hey, call this other substitute. And he tries to, but the guy's like, I can't do it.
I can't do it for a week,
Yeah. Call me again later.
And then he gets the idea of, well, wait a minute. If I go as the substitute, I can pinpoint who did this and I can take care of that asshole. But I can kind of also get a lay of the land of the school. I mean, what she's describing sounds kind of crazy. So I want to just see it for myself. Mm-hmm. Through some shin-shannery, but they're used to creating phony documents as mercenaries to get into countries and out of countries. He comes up with teaching credentials, and he just shows up as the substitute, for the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, give me an interesting name, something unusual, Mr. Smith.
Yeah. Or at least 2 weeks. He's going to be there at least 2 weeks. Now, the first part of the film does a pretty good job of walking an interesting line. It's very exploitation-y as far as like the way the school is depicted and the way the complete out-of-controlness of everything. It's not exactly believable, all right? But it's not Crazy Death Wish 3 Michael Winner either, all right? Yeah. It's not quite exactly something like Crack House, which actually is a much better movie. But it's exaggerated, but it still kind of feels like it still takes place in the real world, sort of. And the pull of the story absolutely works in the first half. You really want Tom Berenger to go to the school, and you want these kids to fuck with him, and you want to watch him fuck them up. And that carries you through the entire first half of the movie. The movie gets even a little better than that in a way that I wasn't quite expecting. It stops being just a vigilante revenge-o-matic and starts little by little turning into the teacher I'll never forget movie.
Yeah.
When he actually starts caring about some of the students. When he finally gets them to listen and just start horsing around, he makes he makes an interesting connection with them. And the students are actually all pretty good. I mean, they're all very, very legit for a Miami school at that time. And I think they're really fun actors. I think that it's a really good young cast that they give their all.
As I was watching this, there were two things that jumped out at me. Mm-hmm. One, the extras casting, the background casting.
Very good.
Absolutely top form in this movie. They are doing great casting. They're casting a bunch of kids who are committing to this world that they've created, this like kind of chaotic school world that they've created. The other thing is all those kids in the classroom, I think, are excellent. All of them are doing a magnificent job, because there was that one scene where he basically begins to connect with them because he starts talking about Vietnam, which is personal to him. And next thing you know, they're all like kind of like, yo, man, you ever get shot, Mr. Smith? And he's like, oh, yeah, I've been shot. And yeah, me too. And they've been shot, and like they start sharing their scars, and then he starts talking about the old gangs when he was young. And pretty soon They're all together,
it's really-
and he's
it's
got
really
this class
cool.
under control in a way that flips out Ernie Hudson, the principal.
Yeah. It's really cool when he starts naming the names of the gangs in the 50s.
Yeah.
All right. That were used to be in this neighborhood. That is really cool. And I was completely caught unaware in his heart-to-heart scene with the kids, which is like the scene that's almost a classic in A Teacher I Never Met, where he finally connects with the kids. And then,
This movie had no right to work as well as it did in that moment. It was fantastic.
And even as I'm just describing it now, I'm kind of feeling kind of the emotions of it, when God, Jesus. Movie's not this good to get fucking cry about it. All right.
But you know what? We were, even when we watched the movie, we were like getting kind of choked up during that
I got
scene.
just choked up now.
It's an emotional moment. It's a scene where there are people who are completely different and like counter to each other are suddenly coming together, and everyone can relate. Well, that's what you want in a movie.
Yeah, the scene that got to me is the scene where he goes, "Well, how many of you have children of your own?"
Yeah.
Okay, and then a large amount of the kids raise their hand. The girls and
these
the boys.
these girls who don't look like they should.
But even boys that fuck the girl and now he's got a baby mama.
And some of them don't even know that the other ones have kids. You have a kid?
Yeah. And they raise their hand and go, "Do you want them to join a gang?"
Yeah.
No. Well, why not if it's so great?
It's like, wow.
And we don't want them to pay the way we have.
Yeah.
But I don't want you to pay the way you have. I care about you.
Yeah.
Well, it's crazy that I found that so emotional, but even relating it again, I got caught up.
Well, this is his character, and this is what makes his character
and
actually
he's so good
lovable.
in that scene. He's so good in that scene.
Well, and then plus, these guys who he has working for him are basically just these kids grown up a little. These are these kids who went into the military.
You made that point when we were watching it, and you're correct.
And he's a parent to them. Like, he's giving them ethics things. Like, no, we're not going to take that job where we just fucking kill people. We're going to do things like there's got to be something else, and just tighten your belt for a little while. We'll find it.
The difference between his mercenary group, which are all younger than him, the difference between his mercenary group and these kids in this school is the guys in the mercenary group at least had an ability for discipline, or they wouldn't have been able to get through the military.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
And they had a guy who was like their dad, who was the substitute for their dad.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So somewhere in the last half hour, 20 minutes, the movie reveals itself.
All of that has been just to get you.
Of what it was all along. And I felt a little foolish for taking the movie a little bit more serious than as serious as I did for a second. Because by the last half hour, 20 minutes, this is a Chuck Norris movie. This is a canon Chuck Norris movie with him playing the substitute. And it's just been disguising that fact for a while, but now it comes into its third act. It cannot disguise it any longer. It is what it is. And by the end, it is completely a crazy canon movie.
Yeah, it's true. You know, it's funny. I'll bet you that Alan Ormsby is responsible for those classroom scenes. Having done My Bodyguard and, coming out of a tough school system and these, I don't know who Rocco Simonelli is, but you told me.
But I like the name.
yeah, you told me about Roy Frumkus, and tell everybody else.
Yeah, Roy Frumkus is, he's a pretty cool dude. All right. The substitute is his idea. He came up with the idea. He wrote the original script. He gets first position. He created the character. All the other substitute sequels based on the character by Roy Frumkus. He also directed the documentary about the making of Dawn of the Dead, Document of the Dead.
Wow. It's, the best document we have of what that was like. An absolutely critical movie for any
for the Laurel Entertainment fans amongst us.
Present.
And, but also he's actually written into our show because Roy Frumkus is the one who ended up buying the magazine Films and Review from National Board of Review, and he publishes it online. He continues to publish it online to this day. I don't know who wrote that speech. It's one of these three guys. It does seem like the speech the big gun Hollywood screenwriter comes in to do as the polish.
Well, I'm looking at the way the screen credits were, and it's Roy Frumkus and Rocco Simonelli, and they're sharing an ampersand, which means they worked somewhat as a team.
Oh, okay, yeah.
On this, or at least they were credited as that. And then Alan Ormsby, which means he came in separately. So he was probably brought in. He punched this up for them, probably.
No, just because the film goes crazy off the rails doesn't make me necessarily dislike it. Now, one of the other things that is kind of disappointing about the film to me is the setup for everything is actually quite good. There's not enough payoff, all right, to the situations that are set up that are 100% satisfying. Partly that is, and you talked about it, is the left-handed half-ass fight choreography that happens when the fights
it looked like they were all done after lunch, after Tom Berenger had a big pasta meal, and he's like, you'll make it work in editing, but I'm just going to kind of slowly go through these.
It really doesn't look like Tom Berenger spent more than an hour, getting in with any of this fight choreography. It's like they literally walked him through it very quickly before they did it, and then he just stumbles through it. It's kind of disappointing how completely unlimber and unathletic
and slow moving he is in the fight scenes. However,
and kind of uncommitted to them.
However, there is one moment where he kicks ass appropriately, and that's when he's beating the shit out of Cliff DeYoung with a helmet, with a highlight helmet.
That scene is fantastic.
When he's whacking him repeatedly and one time too many across the face, and really convincingly also.
Well, one thing, I've never been a fan of Cliff DeYoung, but this is absolutely his best performance he's ever given.
He's wonderful in this.
He is such a little worm. Even though the big emotional action scenes in this movie normally don't have the payoff that you really want, that's one of the best beating the shit out of the sniveling worm to get the information. And I've seen that scene a zillion times. That is one of the better versions of that scene because it's so fucking brutal. He looks like he is literally beating the shit out of him. And
it's almost like they made a foam hat. And then he's like, Tom Berenger comes in, he's like, okay, I'm just going to really hit you hard with this, and it'll look real. And it's like he's really whacking him across the face.
And Cliff DeYoung, he starts getting delirious. He's getting so slap happy. It's kind of it's very delicious. It's a very delicious scene.
And that scene, because it's a Miami movie. It takes place in Miami. I'm not seeing a lot of Miami. I'm thinking this feels like LA, even though I know they're shooting the whole thing in Dade County. But finally, they cut to like the Miami Vice shot that I'm wanting, which is that beautiful widescreen highlight court shot.
Yeah, with the scoop. Yeah.
And the scoop, and then they do a little bit of highlight, and then he goes after the substitute, like he goes out there to kick his ass. He walks onto the highlight court to kick this, like, I don't know, hedge fund guy, drug dealer ass. And the guy realizes, oh, I have a weapon, and that's my highlight thing. And highlight is the most dangerous sport in the world because these balls are rocks covered in leather. And so he's like, oh, I've got a weapon right here. And so he literally shoots a highlight ball at Tom Berenger, who, dodges it. But the next one nails him. As if they were really throwing softballs at him or something. Nails him with it, but that's all he's got. And then he kind of runs. And just watching the sniveling guy just get his ass beaten by a helmet as those two Cuban guys who are making the highlight paddles are there just watching.
Don't care.
They don't care
at all.
They're just fastly making their little... That is one of my favorite scenes in this movie.
But, finally, I guess the proof is in the pudding. I still kind of enjoyed the movie. And like I said, it still had the power to catch my throat when I tried to describe the scene that I liked the most. But I guess the real proof of the pudding is I actually do want to see the substitute too. I actually want to see Treat Williams play the role, and I want to see what they've come up with Mr. Smith to do.
Well, we might have to do that. It's funny you mentioned how they didn't really use these guys enough, and you're absolutely right, because I was thinking about it. We've got Luis Guzman here, and even though he kind of goes out in a big boom in a good way, like I would have more Luis Guzman. William Forsythe is in this. I almost wanted less. And I usually want more.
No, no, he's playing his most annoying note. All right,
they are literally cutting to him every now and then when he's just doing a William Forsythe thing. probably improv while they're waiting to do the shot.
Yeah.
He suddenly will just start dancing and screaming. Hey, just put the camera on, turn it on. And they just cut to that in one moment.
Well,
just for no reason. They just cut to him and he's like, just like dancing. And
he can be terrific, and he can also be this one-note actor. And this is the most one-notey he's ever been.
Yeah.
Black Friday week is here, and so are amazing deals at Amazon. You'll save so much on early holiday gifts for the home, like vacuums, bedding, and home decor. You'll have money left over for that ergonomic recliner to catch up on reading. Or falling asleep while reading. Or those gingerbread scented candles that help with the illusion that you made the dessert yourself. Oh, what fun it is to save. Black Friday week is here with deals up to 35% off.
The Fall Line is a deep dive true crime podcast focused on cold cases that could be resolved if the public knew about them. You'll hear about missing people whose families have been searching for decades, John and Jane Doe cases from across the country in desperate need of public attention, unsolved serial homicides like the Atlanta Lovers Lane murders that never made the national news. The Fall Line digs deep, interviewing the families, law enforcement, and experts closest to the crimes to bring you cases you've never heard of and explore what can be done today to solve them. Find The Fall Line wherever you listen to podcasts.
Gala, come back. Come back into the room.
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Gala.
Hi. Okay, I had a lot of fun watching this movie. I'm just going to right off the bat, I had a lot of fun. I know you guys say the action was kind of like slow moving and like
lethargic. Well, the action, Tom Berenger's fight sequences in particular were lethargic.
I actually really enjoyed it. I thought he totally kicked ass at the beach when he's attacking that Samoan guy who just kneecapped like his lady, who, by the way, is like, I like that she's his girlfriend, but then when the other teacher asks her, oh, who is that? She's like, oh, it's just like some guy that I'm like on again, off again with that I met like in El Salvador, like while I was teaching. Out of these three movies, because there are good relationships in all of these three movies that we watched today, I think this might be my favorite one because she brings so much comedy to her performance.
She does.
Yeah.
That it's actually a realistic relationship. But my favorite moment of hers actually is when she gets kneecapped because she's like running and he goes to like her apartment and then the old lady's like, oh, she's down the street running. And so he's like walking after her.
And they're like playing like Randy Newman or something.
Yeah, they're playing all this music.
know?
And the dogs, but it's funny because they started intercutting all these things from like places that are not in the same place. They're intercutting the dogs from her apartment, kids at the water, people at the beach. Like it's all these different things.
It's a montage. It's a Miami montage.
It's a Miami montage. And then this big Samoan guy comes out with like a tree branch and kneecaps her while she's running and she falls and she screams. And then he's about to hit her again. And they cut to her and she does the most realistic, like, and it's almost over the top comedic. But that's actually, I think, like
what
anyone would realistically act. And it was like actually kind of shocking because in that moment I was like, oh my God, I hope that Tom Berenger comes and saves her. And he does. And then he's like, fighting this.
So it's like a total Gala movie. I was right when we were watching
right.
it. I was like, I think this is probably a Gala movie.
And then, he's like a little bit like not limber, but I actually thought, okay, he's like kicking ass. Like if I was his girlfriend, I'd be really happy right now. Like,
Well, I love that. Like he comes back and she knows that he's a mercenary. She doesn't ask him any questions. She's and which is how these women tend to be like, oh, we're, she's just happy because
the first time she sees him, it's because
he's just been like in some horrible situation where two other guys died.
He's been in a horrible situation where two other guys died, and they've kind of let him go and his team go because it failed. And then she has been in this school, and Mark Anthony's character has threatened her directly, and she goes to the principal, and the principal's like, well, that's not really a direct threat. Like we can't actually get him on that. And her and the other teacher, played by Glenn Plummer, who I love.
Yeah, he's really good in it.
And I loved him in Showgirls, and I loved him in this.
Oh, that's right. He's in Showgirls.
He's in Showgirls.
Oh, yeah.
He's the boyfriend in Showgirls.
Right.
And I love him in that so much. And in this, he's like, you know what? Like, principal's right. He was a cop. He knows, like, you got to get hard evidence on these people.
Well, he's the true believer. He's the earnest, honest guy who's a true believer.
And they totally believe, and they believe the principal. And so when she leaves the school and all the guys like they kind of make gang signs, and then she makes the gang sign, and then she flips it upside down, like defiantly. And they get on her car, and they're like attacking her, and like she just barely manages to escape. And she gets home, and she opens up the elevator, and she screams because someone's inside, but it's Tom Berenger, and she's so happy that what does she do? She just like climbs on him and she starts kissing him, like, oh, I'm so happy you're here. Like,
so this works.
One of the best lines from the movie. She goes, "Well, what's the matter? Oh, it's my students are trying to kill me, but other than that, everything's great."
Everything's great, and she's so funny. She's like a ray of sunshine in this movie.
You know, she's stuck in this cast, all right, that goes up to her top of her thigh to right down to her toes because her kneecap got smashed. So she's stuck with this big peg leg. So all of her scenes with Tom Berenger is she always has to deal with this cast. And at some point, she starts turning into a comedy bit.
Yeah.
Her constant lugging the leg around and throwing it over his head and
itching and scratching
and repositioning it so they can make out actually starts getting funny. And like you could tell that she knows that there's some comedy here, and she starts mining it in a really cool way.
And it actually is a really kind of romantic moment when he's scratching her itch with the coat hanger up the thing, and very sensitively says, "I've gone as far as I can from down below. I think I need to go in from above." And it was like, okay, that's kind of a sexy moment between them. I really dug that.
And how she accepts it too.
Oh, yeah, really she accepts it, and they're having fun, and then they're like, because of the leg, they're kicking over the leg. It was like, those scenes work.
Yeah, they
those
work.
Scenes that I normally really hate in a movie were some of my favorite scenes.
I agree.
I actually think the script is really good. Like, it's really well written. One of my favorite lines is after he goes and, well, first off, he goes and meets to get this job for him and his team. And there's like this like kind of young guy there who's also a mercenary, and they're watching his like VHS tape reel. And that guy shows up later in the end. Yeah, and the guy, because it's who he hires.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Get yourself a video, old timer."
Yeah, right.
I thought that was so funny. And then like the snivelly guy, who is he played by?
Clifton Young.
He was in a Star Trek episode, Vortex.
Oh,
which is a DS9.
He was famous for a very
episode.
famous TV movie called Sunshine, all right, in the 70s.
He was also in Shock Treatment, played Brad Majors in Shock Treatment, the sequel to Rocky, the kind of sequel to Rocky Horror.
Well, Clifton Young is like, he sends the guy out and then he farts like really loud.
Oh, yeah,
like,
that was funny. Clifton Young just like...
Because his whole thing about his character is that he's like trying to eat fiber.
And he can't really control it.
He can't really control it. So he's like waiting 10 minutes for the hot girl to leave so he can fart. And then he starts talking to Tom Berenger, and Tom Berenger's like, "Look, dude, like, let's just cut to the chase. Like, I don't even really want to be here. Like, who am I doing this for?" Blah, blah, blah.
And I also know what you're about. I can see that you want me to do something illegal.
I can just tell.
And and Clifton Young is also like going to town eating the fiber. Like as an actor, he's got a nice little prop that he can just like.
And he's going to town, and then he's like, Tom Berenger says, "You want to hire a killer?" And he's like, "Isn't that what you are?" And he's like, "No. I'm a soldier." And he's like, "You want to know the difference between a killer and a soldier?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And Tom Berenger goes and like grabs him by the throat, and he's like, "Ah!" And then
Clifton Young is he's earning his day rate here.
Yeah.
And then he poops himself. Like,
and the audio.
The audio.
Actually, you know what? All around, special shout out
to the audio.
To the people who did the audio in this movie. Because first of all, and I even commented to you, the bullets in the end. The final shootout, the gunfire. That was
pretty good. I agree. Yeah.
It is not easy to get all of those highs and lows together on an optical track.
Yeah.
And the gunfire was amazing. And some sound editor took special care to do that crapping in his pants sound, which was, it had a whole character arc to itself.
The funniest, well, not the funniest part, but then he tells him like the difference between a soldier and a killer is you're still alive.
Yeah.
And then he leaves, and then his friend's like, "What the F are you doing? Like, we needed that job." And he says to him, and this is one of my favorite lines in the movie, "Have you ever looked up the meaning of a mercenary?" And he's like, "No." And he says, "Well, it's someone who merely works for money." And his friend says, "Everybody works for money." And Tom Berenger goes, "Yeah, but it's the merely part that bothers me."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually you, Quentin, called that out. You were like, wow, that's a good line.
It is a good
line. And it's a really good, and this movie has like tons of good lines. Like, and like Diane Venora has really great lines when she's like, "Well, yeah, you've never worked at that high school before." Like, we all know he's already working there and stuff. And like Quentin and Roger said, I love the sequences in the classroom. I love the sequence where he forces the kids into submission because he goes in and he's doing roll call. And you can tell through his roll call, he's also trying to find out exactly who this kid is that put the hit on his girlfriend.
Sends two of them to the nurse.
Yeah. And then the kids are like not behaving. And so for one of them, he's like, give up your shank. And he won't. And so he like twists his finger into submission. And then he's like, oh, you broke my finger. He's like, no, I just dislocated it. I'll break it the second time. And it's like really funny. And then the other kid throws a can at him and he like catches it and he's like, in Vietnam, we had to think fast. And he throws it back at the kid.
In the face.
And he hits him in the face. And he just like gets these kids into submission so that by the time the principal is like at the nurse's office and like he's gonna like, oh, we're gonna sue and whatever, he goes back and he is sitting there and he's kind of like telling them a little bit about like Vietnam. And like you kind of just see into the classroom. And I love this moment because when they talk about what he did in Vietnam, at first like, oh, weren't we fighting the Nazis? And they're like, no, that was
World War I.
That was an earlier war. That was an earlier war. That was an earlier war that we fought in. We were fighting against communism. And you slowly realize that because this is Florida, all of these kids have been hurt by communism.
Yeah,
like her mom, she ran away
they
from
were
Cuba.
Cubans where they left.
They were Cubans and they left communism. And it's really a powerful moment because you realize like what he's fighting in Vietnam is like what these kids are kind of fighting at home.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? Like, they're doing a good job. And that's why they listen, is because then all of a sudden he's like, well, have you ever been shot? Like, did you ever kill people? And for the first time, they're actually having a conversation with an adult.
Well, they become, kind of equals. I mean, he becomes father figure to them, but somebody that they can relate to.
And that moment.
Actually, I'm choking up again.
Yeah, and that
thinking
moment.
about that scene. That was a really powerful scene.
Yeah, the scene's so powerful. And the moment that Quentin's also right is when he starts talking about the gangs.
Yeah.
I was 12 years old when I had joined my gang because he was one of the kids in the biker gangs.
Yeah.
And he was led astray. And it's so powerful because then also he's like, oh yeah, and like, where were all the black guys, like the ministers or whatever?
They were the strongest gang. They were 5,000 strong.
And he says, well, if they were 5,000, why are we here? And he says, well, that's gang life.
How often do you know an old
an old gang member?
Yeah.
And like the girls were in the gangs.
It suddenly everything what it is they're responding to the truth when it's brought to them. He's not, and he even says, "I'm not going to bullshit you. I don't have the answers."
It's just incredibly
on how you get out of it.
It's incredibly good. And Dad, I like how you mentioned like I didn't even think about the title, The Substitute. I just thought the substitute teacher, but he is really also like a substitute father.
He's a substitute parent.
He is the substitute.
I hadn't thought about that, but no, he does become that.
He becomes that. And as for the gang of guys, okay, like I love Luis Guzman, so like I was like really excited to see him. And like William Forsythe, he's in a different movie.
Well, he's always in a different movie.
But it's a really different movie this time.
It's a good movie. It's a good movie that he's in, but he's always in his own movie.
But I like the moment though where William Forsythe, he gets really pissed off because like they won't take a job that pays. And he's like, you want us to like go in and like infiltrate a school for like no money? And he gets really mad and he leaves. And then all the other guys, they kind of like the difference between a soldier and a killer. They go undercover and like they like infiltrate.
Okay, but Tom Berenger is doing this for particular reasons. One, he's doing it at first it's just to get kind of revenge for his girlfriend. But then he has his other, something's going on here, and he actually does want to change things. But he's smart enough to realize that his guys aren't going to respond to civic duty. It has to be a money situation. And it's really kind of cool that he's like, well, look, here's the deal. This gang that runs this school is obviously pushing drugs. And then a bunch of these kids are dressing in crazy clothes and they're driving BMWs and they're driving Porsches. So there's obviously money here. And it's obviously because they've got a big drug business there. So let's go out, let's get the drugs, let's get the money and take these guys down. All right.
Which is a completely legit.
and
we
love stealing drug dealers' money because they can't go to the cops.
And that's logical to everybody, everybody involved.
And that ends up happening in a good way.
That does happen, but then along the way, and they do it in that whole scene where he basically takes, I think what's happened is he's taken his earnings and he's bought a bunch of stuff.
And that's ended up being, that ends up being.
And suddenly
really
they're
good.
helping and they're sort of like getting into it. And even, I think is it Raymond Cruz who plays his kind of, the guy, he is
Raymond Cruz, who's is famous for Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
And also he's in Dust Till Dawn, too.
That's right. Raymond Cruz, he's basically the Mark Anthony character had he gone to the military and then started working for Tom Berenger.
I love the Diane Venora section, and I'm a big fan of her. I mean, I've been a fan of hers for a long time. And I think that was the number one thing I ended up liking about the movie when I eventually saw it, because to me, she popped with her first movie in 81, which was Wolfen.
Yeah.
And then she didn't actually do another movie, or at least not a known movie, for like quite a few years. I think what the deal is, I think she's a New York stage actress. So she just kind of went back to the stage. But I always loved her in Wolfen. And then she doesn't show up again until Clint Eastwood's movie about Charlie Parker, A Bird, with Forrest Whitaker. Now, I never saw that. But then she's in a whole lot of stuff. She's in Heat. She's in this movie. And I never really kind of liked the roles that she got casted in. So one of the things that's so nice about The Substitute is, oh, wow, she's got a fantastic character in this. I almost think she steals the movie, all right, as far as she's just so full of life. She's so full of character. It's not the cliched role that you would think it should be. And I think she just shines. She just shines all the way.
And also, it's her kindness that she's given to the students that actually eventually pays back. Like the student that writes her the note and says, like, you're the only teacher that ever like trusted in me. Don't leave. Yeah. And that's the girl that eventually comes forward about the drugs.
Right.
And so it's just like it's a whole circle.
And that's even good writing, because the thing about it is she's reading her mail and she reads this thing and she's like, and you're just assuming the bad guys have like sent her a lewd picture or wrote
a death wish
or some weird kind of death wish kind of thing. And we're going to fucking fuck you up, bitch. You know, you think that that's what she's reading. And instead it's like, please don't quit.
Yeah, it's a heartfelt letter.
Yeah, please
she
don't quit.
actually didn't even know that she had gotten through that much.
Yeah.
They wrote a letter.
And I love how she's like, oh, I bet that so-and-so, whoever's supposed to be substituting, made her write that. And he's like, I can assure you, no one made her write that because he is a substitute. Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to ask you guys about the movie, because I kind of thought it was interesting, was that there's no like big reveal that the principal is behind the conspiracy. It kind of just happens in like I don't know if he's like watching like a security camera.
Oh, that wonderful. Actually, no, yes, it was a security camera. Here's the moment.
Yeah.
We're at the school. Tom Berenger is now integrated into the classroom. We're, as an audience, maybe not meant to know, but those of us who are savvy have probably guessed that the principal...
From his first scene.
Must have something to do with it.
From his first scene.
You can tell that he's
suspicious.
We know that Ernie Hudson in some ways was a dirty cop, and that he's, somehow now set up inside of this school. And he goes into the bathroom to meet with the two guys. And by now we're probably, we're ahead of it. And so we see that he comes into the bathroom, and then they do a match cut, like a match dissolve, really, a very quick match dissolve from the actual shot into the screen view of Tom Berenger, who's got a little,
like a little TV
CIA spec-ops guy monitoring system, because they've set up cameras all over the school. He's now able to hear their entire plan against him. Which was such a great moment.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Like, it was such a yes, it was visually, it told you everything you needed to know, and emotionally it delivered.
I can make a strange case, that easily the most janky writing in the film is in the portrayal of the Ernie Hudson villain principal character, who's actually the kingpin who's running this drug empire, and the ridiculousness that goes along with that entire premise.
Well, he tries to do the logic of it, though. Like, hey, we're inside of the school. This is where we're selling.
Well, it's
it's a distribution hub.
I think it's risible what ends up going on with Ernie Hudson's character. At the same time, it is one of the more bizarre things that never goes away in the film. He's terrible, but they don't quite commit, all right, to him being like this loathsome villain 100%. It's almost like they haven't revealed that he's the main bad guy, and they're kind of having their cake and eat it too, that he actually still is just like, the tough principal. It's a strange villain, and you never quite get your handle on him, and you never get quite on solid ground, and I even feel weird about how I feel about him right up to the fucking end.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
But this movie completely wins me over with moments like, with Tom Berenger just being a bear and throwing a bunch of students out of a second story window head first, one after another. I could have watched that for the whole movie.
Before I wrap it up, I just want to give a shout out to the DP because I personally actually love how this is shot. It's Bruce Surtees.
Yeah, Bruce Surtees.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, for
the
those
King of Darkness.
literally the king, but also like for those that don't know, it's Beverly Hills Cop, it's Dirty Harry, it's Risky Business, Escape from Alcatraz, Night Moves, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, White Dog, ladies and gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains, which I love that movie, and Firefox,
and Clint Eastwood's go-to guy.
Yeah,
I
think that's also like one of the reasons like this movie, I don't want to say like looks like it's earlier, but it doesn't look 96 is because you have Bruce Surtees shooting it.
It's really, it really is beautiful. And those crowd scenes are amazing.
You can tell that this, even though this was meant to be a quick payoff, this is a studio version of an exploitation movie because of all the talent involved.
Yeah.
For sure. So this movie is available streaming all over. I watched mine on Amazon Prime for free, but I also bought a VHS tape from Live Video for $3. To hear the rest of this episode, including discussions of 2 more movies and our award winners, sign up for the Video Archives Patreon. You'll get access to full Video Archives episodes, the Video Archives After Show, exclusive merch, and more. Head on over to patreon.com/videoarchives to subscribe today. The Video Archives podcast is hosted by Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary and produced by Josh Richmond and Gala Avary. Find out more about the show and get Video Archives merch at videoarchivespodcast.com. You can also find us on Twitter at Video Archives and on Instagram at Video Archives Pod.